What if I told you there's a country that appears on the world map but vanishes when you look at China's version? For decades, Beijing has drawn its borders to include a land that runs its own government, flies its own flag, and stands proudly independent. To China, it's unfinished business from a painful past. To the people living there, it's home and freedom. The world calls it a nation, but China calls it a province. And behind that disagreement lies one of the most quietly dangerous conflicts shaping the future of Asia. China's map has always been more than lines and colors. It's a statement of history, pride, and power. Yet within it hides a claim that the rest of the world doesn't entirely agree with. A place China says is part of its body, even though it beats with its own heart. This hidden country, often erased from Beijing's official narratives, represents a political wound that never healed. Its existence challenges China's vision of unity and tests the world's resolve to recognize independence over influence. Through the decades, the struggle over this territory has been more than a border dispute. It's been a clash of identity, sovereignty, and memory. For China, reclaiming it symbolizes closure from centuries of humiliation. For its people, resisting that claim means survival. As tension grows, so does the question that defines this conflict. Can two nations share the same history, but not the same future? For centuries, China's borders have been drawn not just with ink, but with emotion, reflecting its long memory of empire, invasion, and resistance. Every mountain, river, and forgotten pass carries a story, and among them lies the disputed land that China still insists is its own. In Beijing's eyes, history is not a relic, it's a weapon of legitimacy. The Chinese government often points to ancient dynasties, like the Qing, which once held sway over far-reaching territories, as proof that these lands were always part of China's rightful domain. During those dynastic times, the idea of sovereignty was fluid. Influence mattered more than strict control. Neighboring regions often paid tribute, traded goods, or exchanged envoys, creating layers of loyalty that blur the lines between autonomy and submission. When China speaks of historical continuity, it's appealing to a time when power was measured by respect rather than recognition. Yet modern nations were born from maps, treaties, and independence movements that replaced imperial relationships with international law. The country China still claims has a history of its own, ancient, proud, and distinct from Beijing's central narrative. Its language, customs, and governance evolved in ways that made it more neighbor than subject, more parallel than subordinate. Over time, as China's empire fell and modern states began to form, these borders hardened into disputes that refused to fade. What was once cultural and fluent became political controversy, and the maps of history clashed with the maps of diplomacy. After the collapse of the Qing dynasty, the new Republic of China struggled to define its borders amid chaos and foreign occupation. The modern Chinese state inherited not only land, but also lingering ambitions, unfinished boundaries drawn by imperial nostalgia. The region in question, whether you see it as Tibet, Taiwan, or Bhutan, became more than a piece of geography. It became a mirror, reflecting how China sees itself, unified, powerful, and unwilling to accept fragmentation. For China, letting go of such claims feels like losing a piece of its soul, a wound reopened from the century of humiliation when foreign powers carved its borders. The memory of those humiliations fuels a modern nationalism that demands restoration, not retreat. Meanwhile, the hidden country at the heart of this dispute walks a narrow path between defiance and diplomacy. It governs itself, holds elections, signs treaties, and maintains foreign relations, all the marks of a sovereign state, yet under constant shadow. This paradox defines its identity, recognized by some, ignored by others, but alive in its own right. Its people have built a sense of belonging grounded not in international approval, but in everyday independence. When China looks outward, it sees an incomplete map waiting to be restored. When the world looks inward, it sees a community determined to exist on its own terms. The gap between those perspectives is where tension thrives, silent but unrelenting. China's growing global power has only deepened this divide. Economic influence, military strength, and strategic diplomacy give Beijing tools to pressure allies and isolate rivals without firing a shot. Through trade agreements, infrastructure, projects, and investment deals, China extends its reach into neighboring regions. Each project carries unspoken expectations to support China's view of the world or risk losing its generosity. For the hidden country, that influence is both suffocating and clarifying. Every diplomatic snub, every blocked agreement, and every censored name reinforces the importance of protecting its identity. Technology and media amplify the struggle in subtle ways. Digital maps, textbooks, and even weather apps often reflect China's version of reality, quietly erasing borders that others still recognize. This control of perception is as powerful as physical occupation. When 1 billion people grow up seeing one version of the world, alternative truths start to look like lies. Internationally, most nations tread carefully between acknowledging the hidden country and maintaining ties with Beijing. Global corporations, esportes events, and even Hollywood scripts avoid language that could offend China's territorial sensitivities. In diplomatic terms, neutrality has become complicity. The silence of powerful nations allows the dispute to fester, shaping global norms around fear rather than principle. For the hidden country, this means fighting a battle on multiple fronts: political, cultural, and psychological. Every map correction, every flag flown, and every speech delivered becomes an act of resistance. Its leaders have learned that visibility itself is victory. Simply existing in international conversations keeps their cause alive against the tide of erasure. China, however, continues to build its case with patience and precision. It invests heavily in research, archives, and propaganda to prove historical claims and delegitimize opposing narratives. These efforts are designed not only to convince the world, but also to reassure its own citizens that the nation's destiny remains sacred. Internal unity depends on external validation, and the disputed territory becomes the stage for both. While military confrontation remains unlikely, the constant buildup along borders and in cyberspace signals quiet readiness. Drones, surveillance, and satellite systems monitor every inch, transforming geography into a chessboard of deterrence. The hidden country responds with symbolic gestures of cultural diplomacy and a growing digital presence. It may lack China's vast resources, but it possesses something harder to control: moral legitimacy. The ideological battle plays out in classrooms, news feeds, and diplomatic summits. Each side claims to represent peace, but both are driven by pride, fear, and the weight of history. For the younger generation within the hidden country, independence isn't a rebellion, it's normal life. They've grown up in a world where their nation exists despite being denied by their most powerful neighbor. Their sense of national identity is reinforced every time China dismisses it. In trying to erase them, Beijing has accidentally strengthened their unity and pride. Meanwhile, global politics continues to shift as superpowers compete for influence. China's assertiveness has alarmed its neighbors, drawing alliances that could either deter or ignite greater tension. The hidden country finds allies not through military might, but through shared democratic values. Its story appeals to a world that still believes small nations deserve dignity, no matter their size. China's leaders see this alignment as provocation for an attempt to contain its rise. The idea of one China remains a non-negotiable principle, shaping every international conversation. But in a world built on recognition, principles and power don't always align. Many governments quietly engage with the hidden country while publicly affirming Beijing's stance, balancing morality with markets. The global community's double standard is one reason the issue persists. Nations want peace and profit without confrontation, leaving the hidden country to defend its truth largely alone. In Beijing's strategic mind, time is the ultimate weapon. The longer it sustains its claim, the more normalized it becomes until the world forgets that the dispute ever existed. The hidden country, in contrast, fights against that, forgetting through visibility and resilience. Its people, film and speak about their identity as if repetition itself ensures survival. Both sides are locked in a quiet standoff that stretches beyond politics. It's a conflict about memory, who gets to define it, and who gets to live inside it. As technology evolves, this struggle for narrative becomes even more complex. Artificial intelligence, digital borders, and surveillance shape how future generations will interpret truth itself. China's confidence stems from its size, but the hidden country's power lies in its persistence. The longer it resists absorption, the more it becomes a symbol for nations everywhere that live under a threat of erasure. To understand this conflict is to understand the modern world's paradox. Globalization has connected economies, but divided identities. Borders may seem outdated, yet for millions, they remain the ultimate expression of who they are. China's claim, rooted in ancient pride, reveals a deeper insecurity, the fear of disunity in a nation built on the promise of cohesion. Every refusal, every act of defiance from the hidden country becomes a reminder of fragility beneath the strength. And so the map remains contested, a living argument between power and principle. Neither side can concede without losing something fundamental to China, its sense of completeness. The hidden country, its very existence. As the world watches, often in silence, one truth becomes clear. This is not merely a territorial issue, it's a moral frontier where history, identity, and ambition collide. In the end, the question is not who owns the land, but who owns the story. For as long as both sides refuse to let go, the lines on the map will remain blurred, but the struggle will stay vividly alive. The conflict over this hidden country is more than a borderline, it's a battle of belief. China sees the land as a missing piece of its historical puzzle, while the world sees a nation trying to define its own destiny. This struggle isn't fought with tanks or bombs, but with words, maps, and symbols. Every diplomatic statement and every edited atlas becomes another skirmish in an invisible war. For China, conceding this claim would be like rewriting its own past, something its leadership cannot afford to do. The story of unity and restoration fuels its national pride and legitimizes its global rise. For the hidden country, existence itself is resistance. Every flag raised and every citizen who refuses to disappear keeps its spirit alive against overwhelming odds. The world stands uneasily between sympathy and silence, unwilling to anger China, yet uneasy, watching an identity slowly erased. It's a test of how much truth nations are willing to trade for economic comfort and geopolitical peace. In the digital age, the fight has moved to screens and satellites, where visibility means survival. The hidden country's voice echoes online, reminding humanity that recognition is the foundation of freedom. China's map may show one version of reality, but reality itself resists being confined to paper. Identity, culture, and memory have a way of surviving even the most powerful narratives. In the end, this dispute isn't just about who owns the land, it's about who gets to define existence. Between power and principle lies a fragile truth that neither side can fully claim. And as long as that truth remains unresolved, the map of Asia will stay divided not by mountains or rivers, but by the eternal human desire to be seen, remembered, and free.